I'm your host, Tim Wood. Welcome to The Natural You, where we'll be interviewing guests from different backgrounds and all walks of life to discuss our relationship with nature and how we can better connect to the natural world, both in us and around us. Nature already has all the answers we need to be healthier and happier in all aspects of our lives. Listen up to hear how to access more of The Natural You. Today we'll be speaking with my mentor, Stu Bittman. Stu is beloved in the chiropractic community all around the world. He has spent 40 years in chiropractic, practicing for 24 years, 12 of those with a box on the wall donation style practice, and more recently, coaching, speaking, and leading workshops. Stu spent 15 years learning, traveling, speaking, and teaching alongside the great chiropractic leader, Jim Sigafus. And since then, he has brought his own unique brand of wisdom and love to the chiropractic world. In addition to being one of the most perennially popular speakers at Chiro Europe in Spain, Chiropractic Essentials in England, and the Innate Summit in Australia, Stu is creator of the Chiropractic from the Heart workshops, which for me personally have been life-changing experiences. I know that these events have opened the hearts of thousands of people internationally. At these workshops, Stu teaches us that the true success starts with a free and open heart. He also does a weekly podcast called Stew on This, which I highly recommend, where he shares his life experiences and his love for mankind through messages of wholeness, peace, love, compassion, support, and of course, humor. Well, welcome everyone. I've got the amazing Stu Bittman with me here, and I've been really looking forward to this inaugural podcast of The Natural You, and who better to do it with than my mentor, Stu Bittman. Stu, first of all, thanks for joining us.
Oh, so welcome.
As I know you as someone who really enjoys being in nature, but I also know that you grew up in the city, and I'm curious to know when you first kind of felt a connection in nature, or your first sort of earliest memories of nature connection, and how that kind of developed for you.
Yes, I grew up in New York City and Queens, so yes, not a lot of green, not a lot of. So I think it was when my family would take a car trip to somewhere certainly more nature-ish, but it was like 1 or 2 weeks a year in the summer. So that's when I got a taste of it, and then when I was able to drive, we regularly escaped the city when we could. And, within an hour or two, you could get to some pretty nice nature spots. So, yeah, and I think my wife had a lot to do with it because she's always been a nature girl. So she inspired me in that way.
And how old were you when you met Hillary?
When I met Hillary, I was about 19, but it took a year or so before she noticed me. So, but we've been kind of together for, since 1976.
Wow.
So there was nature even back then.
And I know you live in a really beautiful place. Can you tell us a little bit about why you chose that? And
yes, I was standing on the subway in New York where I was working in Manhattan and living in Queens, and I was lucky enough to get a spot standing up by the door, so you at least could lean on something and not have elbows in your face. But I don't know, it was really hot, and I looked down and I was dripping sweat, and I looked around at people's faces, and I'm like, there's got to be something more to life than this. So I made the decision right then and there to escape. My brother and I planned a trip because I was turning 21, I think, to Las Vegas, not the nature capital of the world either. And then he had been to Lake Tahoe, and he talked me out of going to Las Vegas, thinking, oh, we can still gamble, and yet I think you'll like it a lot better because it's a beautiful place. And he was definitely right. I fell in love with the place, and we started a plan to raise enough money to move the following spring.
Wow.
So that was March of 1979. We packed up our car and drove across the country, and the plan was we were going to just spend the summer here and then move to San Diego or something like that. But it's been a 40-year summer.
Wow.
43 years summer.
Wow. With some big cold winters as well.
Yes, been a lot of snow in that summer. Yeah, we have a howling rainstorm going on right now, as a
Oh,
matter of
wow.
fact. So if you hear that in the background, it's not anybody moaning. And
Wow. Um, so kind of going back to, I know you live in a really sort of natural area with trees around you and things like that.
Mhm.
But where do you like to go to sort of out of the house? I know you can look on it from your house, but obviously looking at it and being in it is a little bit different. Or it is for me.
Very different. Though I appreciate being able to see trees and stuff. Water is my favorite thing. Moving water, generally, streams, but lakes, ocean.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of ocean around here, but when we leave Tahoe, that's usually where we go. All, to me, water especially is not only peaceful, but speaks to me,
Mm,
tells me a lot, shares a lot with me. Um, so fortunately, we have hundreds of lakes and dozens of streams within a 10, 15-minute drive of here, or a walk. We can
brilliant.
walk right back out our backyard and get down to the river in about a half a mile.
Oh, beautiful.
So yes, very, very fortunate. It was certainly been a blessing these past few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, is that kind of that river speaking to you, or the water speaking to you, that I'd like to explore a little bit more. Um, so, that kind of level of connection, would you describe that as a spiritual connection, or what sort of words would you use to?
Hmm. I would. I mean, the best thing about it is I don't generally have words for it because it's sort of a thoughtless place that I'm in when I'm there. But I would definitely describe it as a spiritual, like a connected
Hmm.
experience. I find nature, not just water, but all of nature, sort of humbling.
Yeah.
I feel certainly my day-to-day concerns are diminished. It gives me a great perspective that there's something going on that's much bigger than me, and that could, potentially wipe me out in in the snap of a finger. Certainly around here, we get some intense weather that, if it was just a little more intense,
Yeah.
could be quite interesting. So that's humbling, very humbling to me. But also, it gives me the feeling that that same, or the knowing that that same power and that same beauty and that same incredible harmony and balance that I see in nature is also in me. Hopefully, I'm not jumping ahead too much here, but yeah, that's why I feel connected, because it's I feel part of it.
You recognize that you're part of it.
It's sort of a I'm part of it and it's part of me feeling at the same time. So I guess you would have to call that a spiritual experience. Yes.
No, I think that kind of level of connection is really, and exploring that is really part of what I'm hoping to achieve here, is chatting to people who feel some kind of connection, and just exploring that a bit more, and seeing different ways of experiencing and expressing that. Um, so as we sort of in that sort of spiritual realm, and talking about those kind of things, I know you were a minister at a multi, would you call it, a interdenominational sort of multi faith kind of church,
Hmm.
um, and how did nature impact on your view of nature, impact on your approach to being the minister, or the
Hmm.
man leading the congregation?
Well, I mean, it's certainly part of the worldview that I presented every week. And it was hard for me because I don't know, and it's also what I hear was hard for Native Americans. When the books I've read, they didn't necessarily disagree with the religions that were being shoved down their throats. They essentially, the only problem was doing it inside and doing it like in four walls and stuff. So nature, having always been my
Mm,
sanctuary, my church, my cathedral, if you will, um, it was a challenge to bring that into four walls and stuff. So other than insisting on the fact that we had windows, in the space that we found. Uh, um, Teaching this message that we're talking about here, but it was amazing to me actually how many people in my community here don't really get out in nature, even though it's almost impossible not to.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was an important part of my message for people to experience that, because it's I don't know, whenever the world doesn't make sense to me, nature calls, because it always makes sense. It's such an amazing feeling to know that all these things are happening in spite of and around and through and outside of my petty concerns and my perspectives that tend to get very limited and narrow, because it's all about me. and, and we're all like that to some degree. So to get out of that, nature is the best way for me to get out of that in a beautiful, productive, and empowering way.
I would like to think that most people of faith, whatever it is, would probably agree that God is to be found in nature. Or easier to find access to in nature. So I don't think there'll be too many people arguing with that. Maybe on other things around that, but I find that quite interesting, because certainly in my upbringing, in the sort of more Christian, Judeo-Christian upbringing, we had a great reverence for nature. But it was always as the creation, and so we should be looking at the creator rather than the creation.
Mm-hmm.
And but I'm become more interested in that kind of view where man is at the top of the pyramid, almost. I think the word is in the Bible perhaps is dominion over animals and plants and nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this kind of dominion and dominance. And I know you've touched on that before in one of your podcasts. So I wonder if you could just speak to that a bit.
Yeah, I have heard, and of course, who knows? But I think it was an unfortunate translation. Dominion obviously does, and that's in Genesis. So right off the bat, after everything was created, it says we were given dominion over all things, and yet so what I've heard is it really meant domicile rather than dominion,
Okay.
like this was our home. This is so we would treat it as if we were stewards of a home, which means we're part of it, obviously, but we're also have the responsibility to nurture it, to guard it, to maybe even improve on it, which is maybe an unfortunate idea, because I'm not sure if we could do that. But obviously dominion, in the sense of dominate, has a whole different energy, and that's kind of the one we ran with in a lot of ways in our culture.
Yeah. And I guess the exploitation that can happen with that kind of dominance, which tends to happen in dominant relationships, you will tend to have, the dominant species or the dominant person would be often, exploiting the other person or the other resources. So yeah, I think that's
sure
kind of, to me, helps explain why certainly in the West, those drivers of, I even heard a kind of popular guy the other day on some podcast saying, we need to push nature back, and he was talking about nature within us. It's kind of some of the more darker aspects of our nature. We need to get to that boundary and keep pushing back. But I couldn't help feel he was kind of pushing back. This chap's a confirmed sort of capitalist, evil capitalist, as he calls it, but sort of pushing back into nature. And I just, I found that quite kind of tying in with that dominance.
Well, I mean, if we're coming from the place that we're part of nature and nature's part of us, then what are we pushing back against? Obviously pushing back against ourselves, and just the idea of pushing back against anything implies that we're separate from it, right? So, I guess I don't agree.
No, me neither. Me neither. I think. So what ways would you say? So with that separateness and the separateness we see in ourselves, what tips could you give us, or ways that you found useful to find that connection, or to kind of maybe sort of seeking for a deeper connection, what advice or what sort of experiences could you suggest for people listening?
Well, get out of the house would be my first thing. I mean, obviously not everybody gets to live in the forest as I do, but everybody there's a green space, there's a park, there's a river, there's something undoubtedly that might be worth regular visits to, because we shut ourselves off from it, and it's nice. It's lovely to have a house with a fireplace and heat and stuff when it's raining and howling. And yet, the danger is we get so cut off from it that it's so much easier for it to seem separate, or to be the enemy, or to be something we need to push back against or guard ourselves from. I mean, again, look at these last few years. We've attempted to wall ourselves off from nature in so many ways.
Yeah.
So, grow a garden, have some house plants. If we can't get out in nature as often as we'd like, we can bring some nature in. We at the very least, we could watch some nature shows. I mean, I can never watch a nature show without a sense of connection or awe, or, oh my God, how ridiculous we are that we think we can do better than that, and we can manipulate and think we can dominate. Even if we were told we had dominion, I'm not sure that was an accurate. I guess I don't agree with that. Sorry if that's blasphemic, but I certainly don't agree. I certainly don't agree with that translation or taken in that way.
Yeah, well, it's definitely that, as in a more sort of ecocentric model, or looking at the ecosystems. The old, I mentioned the pyramid at the start. With man at the top, and even even the early theories on how we evolved all have us, the pinnacle of all of that being humans. Whereas some of those diagrams are more circular diagrams of everything being interconnected.
Yes,
and that just makes it, as we all part of that. So we can see it. I think we can see it in diagram form, but it's that feeling I'm really hoping that I think will change people, because we can see diagrams and we can see nature, but until we perhaps have that connection, it's harder to, and you say it's hard to put into words. It's an experience or a feeling.
But it is also an unmistakable feeling, I think. So, and I'm not sure how many people have not experienced it somewhere, whether it was a sunset or as in most things in life, I encourage people to do what's important. Not wait till you think you have time, or you're going crazy, or you're pulling your hair out, or you're hating the world, or see, I'm listing those because those are some of the reasons that I attempt to get out in nature preventatively, but I certainly have waited in my life. Yes. And it's
yeah.
It seems odd that we would even have to sell it in any way, but yes, it's where we are. I know that here.
No, carry on.
I was just going to say that here, I know they have programs to bring inner city kids out in nature in different ways, and then the kids are like petrified at first, anyway. So to me, that's sort of a symptom of where we're at. It's to be more comfortable in the city or in our whatever. So nature has become this deep, dark, scary thing, which is sort of deep, dark, and scary to me.
And there's this, and I think the constant stimulation of the city with different noises and sounds and access to different things. I met a lady when I was in Portugal once, and I just happened to sit next to her and her husband at a restaurant, and she was saying, "Oh, no, she goes to see her friend in the countryside in England. They were from England, and but she can't last more than a day because there's no coffee shop on the corner, and where would she go and meet people and do things? It's just like the idea of sitting still for any moment of time, even with beauty around you, just wasn't enough to fulfill her. So just wasn't able to sit. So maybe there's something in the sitting. To be able to listen, you need to be able to be still.
It is probably one of the biggest challenges about it for people is
Mm.
we become so dependent on stimulation and distraction, and and yet anytime I sit for any period of time in nature, all of a sudden there's all kinds of things to pay attention to, like birds and and animals and smells and sounds and quiet. I mean, how much
Mm.
quiet do we experience in our life? And I imagine there are apps for our phones to experience quiet, but that's but there's other ways too, folks.
Well, maybe that's it. Maybe when we do go to the park or out into the woods or for a walk in the fields, whatever it is, maybe we can just put it on flight mode and stick it in the pocket and just say, okay, right, for the next
Hmm.
10, 20 minutes, half an hour, I'm going to just not want to take.
And deal with our craziness about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and not. Oh, that's a beautiful picture. I need. That's a beautiful view. I need to take a
Hmm.
picture so I can share it. Yeah, we want to do that too, but maybe just committing some time to just being totally in the space.
I think it would be a tremendously worthwhile venture in so many ways. And I can relate because when I moved from New York City to Tahoe, it was too quiet. It took me about 6 weeks or 2 months to be able to sleep without the screeching tires and the ambulances and the police cars and the constant rumble of traffic and stuff. So it's
You'd think it would be the other way around. You'd have all that space. I remember my parents when they moved from the city to the farm where we lived. They said that the sound of the frogs at night was just deafening. It was just so loud, and then you just kind of get used to it. I
and
don't know. My son's now left to our fairly kind of rural setting to move to London to the city to university, and all the sirens and the alarms. He finds it really difficult to sleep. So
I bet. Yeah. Now, if somebody sneezes within a half a mile of me, I can't sleep. So I have gone the other way for sure. Now I need quiet, which is always interesting in hotels and stuff. But another subject.
cool, man. So I'd like
Yeah.
to shift gear a little bit, and we've been talking a lot about kind of nature outside of us, and you mentioned you mentioned it and you hinted at it earlier on about how that reflects to the nature inside of you. And in chiropractic, there's a term, innate intelligence, which we refer to in terms of the way the body knows what to do. And I like to think of that and talk about it as a non-brain intelligence. So plants react, change environment according to stimuli. An ant doesn't have a brain; it has a ganglion, but it certainly is alive and moving and intelligent.
Mhm.
And if I said non-brain intelligence to you, um, what things pop into your head?
The first thing that popped into my head was thank God. Good job, God. I'm sorry if I blasphemed on the Dominion thing. You did really well on this one. Yeah, because and again, not that we don't try, but we can take the same approach to the intricate balance and amazing intelligence of the body being, in my mind, the same intelligence that's running things out in nature.
Mm.
Again, since I believe I am one with nature, then that oneness flows from that intelligence. Same, we might call it something different, but it's everything, every bit of harmony and balance and beauty and power that I observe in nature, I believe is exactly what's going on in me. So again, if we believe we're separate from that, whether it's outside of us or inside of us, then we're gonna make some choices based on dominating, right? And that's certainly what we have done. And sometimes, of course, that is a really good idea when we're in a tremendous first aid situation. We're probably more normal without massive cuts in our skin and stuff or broken
Mm.
bones, and yet all those things, healing begins as soon as it happens. How on earth can that happen? Like you and I, certainly intellectually, this is why I say thank God that it's not a brain thing. I mean, intellectually, we may know that the chemical processes involved in digestion or in healing a wound, but can we do it? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think so. The simple healing of a wound is not so simple. You and I know there's dozens of chemical reactions that have to take place in the exact right sequence of events, and nobody can do that in the
And and,
lab.
ev- and even
And
and
yet,
even when you've learned each chemical reaction, we still can't do it.
no, I mean, that's what I had this realization. This was like one of my biggest spiritual awakenings, is when I realized how proud I was of myself for memorizing the Krebs cycle. Hopefully, if you don't know what that is, it's quite all right. You can live a long, happy life. It's involved in carbohydrate metabolism. It's going on all the time in every mitochondria and in every cell in your body. So here I am. I'm proud that I can memorize the chemical reactions, but then I realized that, again, every mitochondrion in my body is doing it. Is actually like performing these things and knowing how to do it and knowing which order. It was a very humbling and beautiful realization. So yes,
Trillions of cells doing it every second,
yes, and God knows how many mitochondria within.
without any brain intelligence involved.
Exactly. Gosh. And nature, again, just to go outside again. We have these little spider things that they walk on water. They're called water striders.
Yeah.
And it's just so amazing to see these things, but then to learn that when the water supply dries up, all of a sudden the offspring are going to have wings.
Wow.
Because they're going to have to leave to find a different place to live. And I'm like, okay, what a great design. Who thought of that? And even if we thought of that, how on earth could we think we could, duplicate that or do better than that? So inside the body, you and I, again, have the privilege of seeing the amazing workings of the body, but we all do.
Yeah.
We so
How would you encourage or help people kind of get to a point of trusting that nature inside us, or that innate intelligence? I think there's that, well, we're told one thing about, we need this drug, or we need to do this thing for this to happen. And certainly for me, a journey of learning to say, okay, well, I don't need a Nurofen for my headache. Maybe that my body knows what to do. Maybe it's a glass of water. Maybe it's a caffeine withdrawal. Maybe I need new eyeglasses, or maybe I'm just tired, or maybe I'm fighting a virus. Or how could we encourage people to trust that more? Because that's a sort of ongoing process, especially in our medicalized society.
it really is. That's what certainly makes it a challenge. First of all, it takes a willingness. I mean, if this is resonating with you, that would be a great start to, and then I think of Ernest Hemingway's quote. He's an American writer, pretty famous here, who said the only way you can know if you trust somebody is to trust them. So, so that would be my first response, is, and to realize how much we already trust them. Again, how many of us have sleepless nights over a cut healing?
Yeah.
It's just that we create this hierarchy of things in our body. I mean, maybe we assume our body's intelligence went to medical school just long enough to deal with cuts and broken bones, and skipped out on the rest of the term on all the other things. But every second of our life, this intelligence is keeping us alive, is adapting. So maybe looking into that a bit more and acknowledging that a bit more and appreciating. How many of us don't even think about our body unless it's speaking to us in a way that's bugging us, or is, expressing symptoms? How many of us, express any appreciation for the 420 octillion things that are going on in our body in any 1 second, which is a number I calculated from Deepak Chopra stuff.
And perhaps listening to the whispers before, like you say, we listen to the protestations or the yelling beforehand.
Exactly. Paying more attention in order, if we trusted somebody, we would probably listen, So that would be a great gateway into trust, is to start listening. Because I think there's always at least subtle messages of stuff going on before we get hit with the 2x4. bodies are very intelligent, and most of us, again, I don't want to judge because I do it too, but we're too busy on our phones and with our media and with our distractions to really tune into what's going on.
Yeah.
Inside that same level of stillness, which I think is helpful to enjoy nature and to feel that level of connection. If we could do that with our own nature, our own universe in here, I think we would also get the same kind of messages and the same kind of feeling of connection.
Yeah. And I suppose that perhaps the way we live and what we eat and all those kind of things can interfere with those natural processes.
Sure.
So in your work as a chiropractor and working with as a coach, working with chiropractors and other people, how do you kind of find those interferences to processes, to natural processes, and what sort of advice did you give to your clients now, both as a chiropractor and now as you're not in sort of hands-on anymore, whether it's in the practice on the table or talking about some of the interferences perhaps at a mental level or emotional level? What tools did you use in practice and do you use now?
I noticed that I'll get around to the general answer to that question, but
sorry,
that's
a lot in there.
Yeah, it is. It's a loaded question. People would almost invariably report to me, without me really getting into that they were making different choices, that they were paying more attention, that they were because in general, answer to your question, it involves paying attention.
Yeah.
It involves listening. It involves getting quiet enough to know what's going on and to observe the consequences of some of our behaviors, not in a judgmental way, but there's always consequences to our choices. And, it's like just a dramatic example, but I think, I smoked cigarettes for a while. I can't believe there's been anybody who smoked cigarettes for the first time and liked it.
Yeah.
But if you keep at it, this amazing intelligence of ours will adapt and make it more palatable, and even so. I think there's always consequences to the choices we make that create interference. It's just how much are we willing to look at that and pay attention to that, and to subtly make some changes in that. And that's what people would report to me often without me. It's amazing to me. And again, it does make sense to me because we were, through chiropractic adjustments, we are helping to reconnect people to that innate intelligence because it expresses through the nerve system. And that's what we're freeing up. That's what where we're removing interference that's already been established in the nerve system. So I think people had a clearer connection to that wisdom within, and it wouldn't make sense to have an intelligence that can do 420 octillion things in every 1 second and yet have no way to let us know when some of those things are interfered with.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and to me, that's what symptoms really are, more an indication of some evidence of our choices rather than something the body's doing to betray us or is doing wrong or is, lacking or sufficient in some way, certainly lacking in some kind of drug. I don't believe that health problems are due to the lack of drugs.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that drugs are never a helpful thing, but our bodies are the greatest pharmaceutical, clearinghouse and creation mechanism in the universe. There's not a drug out there that our body doesn't make, and when it makes it in our body, it makes it in the right amounts, and there's no side effects. So. Was that an answer to your question, Tim? I kind of went off there, but
I think so. Yeah. So I think so that certainly covers the interference, that you were finding in practice in the nervous system, and helping to remove that, help to connect aspects of the person so they can just work better, function better as nature intended. And I think perhaps as a coach, people have interferences or disconnections in their lives, personal or work, or and how do we approach those kind of perhaps more emotional or social or interactions, the interferences there? What's this kind of general tool that that's a huge question. But
but it all
apologize for that.
It's all right. Because it still comes under the category of self-awareness. So if I have patterns of thinking that I know are depleting my energy or destructive in some way, which we all do, then something like meditation would be a great way to root that out. But even that comes under the category of getting quieter, and paying attention. So they all come under that realm. A lot of us need to do some forgiveness work. A lot of us need to do forgiveness work on ourselves. A lot of us go right to a place of beating ourselves up for some of the choices we've made, rather than make different choices. So I know that one too. I apparently was under the impression that if I beat myself up enough, I wouldn't have to make different choices. I would just, magically be better. So when I work with people, this is part of it. And I generally approach it from a level of consciousness, whether it was with chiropractic patients or my clients. I didn't have a lot of luck getting them to change diet and stuff. But again, if we change their connection with themselves and their outlook on themselves, and a lot of the work I do is to fall in love with yourself, not in an egotistical way, but in all the ways we're talking about, honoring the amazing intelligence that we are, and the amazing, I tend to think that also inherent in that intelligence are all the other things we're looking for, like love and joy and peace in our lives. So it's kind of all the same work, which is nice. All the different ways that we can allow. I just ran into this word. Well, I didn't run into the word, but I ran into the meaning of the word. Evolution, literally means to to open up or to unfold what has been rolled up. And I love that, because I believe what has been rolled up in all of us is not only health and not only ease and harmony and balance, just as we observe in nature, but love and joy and peace of mind and abundance and all the things that we tend to, interestingly, no pun intended, look outside ourselves for. So
beautiful.
And when we don't, and when we're disconnected from that on any level, that's the interference. So there's so many ways to approach the layers of interference that many of us have. So your first question about, how do you reconnect with nature? All those answers apply. Give ourselves the time to tune back in. To acknowledge and appreciate, rather than, the ministry that I got involved in started in the late 1800s. The co-founder had she was an invalid. She had some kind of respiratory condition, and she heard a speaker say something. It was kind of an affirmation, and she ran with it. And it took 2 years, but her symptoms or her condition went away. And the only big change was she started praising her body and appreciating her body, and actually apologizing to her body for having called it weak or deficient. What she was really doing was reconnecting with it with a whole different energetic pathway of love, rather than, condemning it or thinking it has failed us, or, so just that change alone, I think, would be a large step toward trusting in it more.
Or at the very least, stop beating ourselves up about it, or in her case, literally, mentally, verbally abusing herself or beating herself up about it.
Right.
That's beautiful, Stu.
And I think we all tend to do that to some degree, and including me, when I remember having this terrible food poisoning one time, and the minister who spoke every week about affirmative prayer. We don't have to beg for things; it's already rolled up within us. We just have to claim it, express it, call it forth, kind of thing. But as I was hugging the bowl, I heard myself saying, "Please, God, help me." So we're human, and we're always going to hope there's something out there.
Yeah.
But anyway, amazingly, I felt better.
Yeah, well, if there's poison inside, what would the body want to do? Get rid of it.
Yep.
Yeah, brilliant.
Oh yeah, I was doing a good job of that.
Well, maybe we could take an antiemetic and stop ourselves vomiting and see how that works out. Yeah.
We would feel better right up to the moment we died. Yes.
Brilliant, Stu. So I want to kind of perhaps sort of sum that up a little bit.
Okay.
Good
luck.
So yeah. Well, I think the two kind of main 2 points really is making time to connect with the nature outside of us, and that means going outside and or being close to nature and just being in it and observing. So there's that quietness. So you can't listen unless you're quiet. So just being quiet to start off with, and then we can listen and smell and feel and use our senses to interact without having to say anything and just be there. So it's making the time and being quiet and listening, and then perhaps just turning, and that's on the outside, on in towards our bodies, and inside maybe that I pulled out was just the attention or awareness of what's going on in our bodies, and maybe that could be something as simple as feeling where there's tension in our body, perhaps or where something don't feel right, and when we do invariably mess up or don't live a way that we want to be, that might not lead to a healthy way, is to realize that these are choices, and those can lead to interferences, but we can change those choices.
Absolutely.
Not always easy, those choices lead to interferences, and there are different ways of removing those interferences. But I think would that sum it up?
Yeah, that's a pretty good recap. That was good.
Cool.
That was good. Yeah, and I know that people here, take the time, and that probably, doesn't seem possible or whatever. I know time is seems like a very precious or limited resource, but I just remember one of my teachers saying, if you're concerned about not having enough time, stop wasting the time you have. And I don't know how much time we waste being disconnected, and all the fires we have to put out, and all the level of because I think most of us are like this close to our threshold of freaking out in this world right now. That's the beautiful thing about connecting with nature again, is it'll
just kind of resets it a bit. Yeah.
I don't know, lower that or raise the threshold or exactly. So these things are really important. They are not luxuries to me. They are, and as you know, I teach this thing from Stephen Covey. When we don't do what's important, we end up dealing with a lot of things that feel urgent.
Yeah.
And we're going to give those things our attention. So it's really, really cool to work it in. And if time is a factor, just try it, because it expands time, and it makes us more efficient, and it makes us more effective. And we have to spend a lot less time dealing with the consequences of our, less than skillful decisions that we make when we don't give ourselves what's important. So, and also some time is better than none. Maybe we'd like to sit by a river for 6 hours, but if we have 20 minutes, it's still going to be
absolutely
helpful.
So Stu, I'm going to sort of start wrapping it up. Where can people find you? Where are good places to reach out to you if they want to hear more of what you have to say or want to interact more? What are good places to reach you?
Well, Facebook, Stu Bittman, or Bittman Bliss. I have a Facebook page, and there's also like Instagram at Bittman Bliss. I have a podcast called Stew on This, with hyphens between there's 2 hyphens in there.
I'll put some
email,
links in with those. Yeah.
carrier pigeon. I'm easy to find.
Cool. And do you have any workshops coming up or anything planned, or will those be on your website?
They will be posted on the website in the next couple of weeks. I have tentative things, but nothing firmly established. Yes, coming back to the UK, hopefully in May.
Brilliant.
So, yes, that should be on the website very soon.
Brilliant, Stu. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate that so much, bud.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for being an advocate for quote unquote nature. Are you familiar with, in closing, with that Max Planck quote?
Carry on.
About the problem with trying to solve the problem of nature is that we are part of the problem we're trying to solve. Something like that. That's not exactly right, but it's a beautiful, from a scientist, a beautiful wrap up, I think, for what we've been talking about.
Perfect. Thanks, Stu. Thanks so much again. Cheers, pal. Bye.
All right, Tim. Have the best. Happy New Year.
Thank you so much for listening to The Natural You. I hope you got something useful out of this episode. If you think someone might benefit from hearing this, please share it with them. Lastly, I'd love it if you hit the subscribe button and rate and review this podcast. See you next week.